So today we're once again joined by Simone Fortier of the Fascia Training Institute. Simone's going to be here in Ottawa in about 6 weeks' time for teaching her level 1 course. It is the upper body fascia training course. Level 1 is going to be here in Ottawa. I'll be hosting her on September 17th and 18th, 2022. So Simone, let people know what the Fascia Training Institute is and what the upper body level 1 course is.
Okay, those are big questions. The Fascia Training Institute really is created out of the offshoot of all the work that I've been doing with fascia over the years. And then really, and like I said, in 2000 or 97, I was teaching myofascial work. And then it kind of morphed into really specifically the fascia. And when I say that, it actually includes the nervous system, the lymphatic system, and the muscular system, as well as ligaments. So it's looking at fascia is a global term that I use really for all the structures. So when people are doing the fascia work, oftentimes tools are great, but if they're really hammering on the fascia, they're not addressing or they're actually damaging the lymphatic system. So what I created is looking at finesse versus force. So how can we work with the fascia without hammering it, grinding it, because all the other structures, especially the demographic I work with, have nerve damage, have concussion, head injury. If we overstimulate the lymph or the nervous system, it's going to create more damage. So again, finesse. So how do we actually affect the fascia directly without, creating more trauma? So what's really great is with the courses in that too, it's also about saving the coach's body as well as the practitioner, because we're using physics, not force. So it's a whole different, what people have been saying, because the more I teach that, it's like opposite of what everyone else is teaching. And so it takes a while to get that concept into people's minds, is that I'm teaching a system, a procedure, and really a treatment of how to address fascia. So I just finished writing a blog that Designs for Sport is probably going to put up as soon as they revamp their website on really fascia treatment versus fascia training. So with this one particular piece, doing the upper body treatment, it's looking at the difference between what stretching is, what actually treatment is, and the two are very different. So I can include stretching in the treatment, but it's not the entire program. So it's actually looking at all the different levels of how you can approach fascia, starting really with, okay, so going back to the fascia treatment versus training. So I know with strength coaches in particular going, okay, when do you do the treatment? And what you just said, you just had a soccer player there for 6 weeks. There's different levels of the treatment. Yeah, you want to do it initially in the off season or when they have a break, because when you create change fascially, it does create instability in the system because the brain is changing. So not only is the fascia changing, the brain's changing, so it has to adapt to really where the body is in space now, because we take out those lines of tension in the fascia and it reorganizes the entire body. So for a short period of time, the athlete may be weaker because of that integration. So that is fascia treatment. So you can do the reflex work, which is an instant change so that they, have more power or speed on the field. But that's a reflex treatment. So that could be the NKT, AK, all that sort of things that just switch on the body so that the person, their energetic system just can override any of that fatigue. And so there is balance there. So does it stay? So that's looking at that piece too, involved with the treatment. And then you have the fascia training. So the different types of tempo. So slow is recovery. And then the quicker, more ballistic is for strength and power. So looking at all those different levels and really articulating that. So in the course, what people are really demanding is more fascia assessment. They want to know what I see, because I can see something like, yeah, okay, here's the lines of tension. This is where you do the treatment. So when you're working with fascia in particular, it's not symmetrical because the lines of tension aren't symmetrical. So that's the recovery, that's the off-season sort of thing, because that's where we create that imbalance. So for a major portion now, and I'm also partnering with an AK doctor to teach the fascial assessment and then doing AK techniques on how to really switch that on right away. But in the upper body, I introduce the fascial assessment and probably spend at least a couple hours there, because it's so different than watching someone's gait, looking at from, the skeletal or the muscle model. It's very different. And so even a line of tension in the cranium could affect the rest of the body. And so it can be that specific, but mostly the procedure is looking at, let's take out the biggest lines of tension and then see what presents. So, got a question?
Okay, so who would this course be geared towards? You talked about coaches and therapists. So who in your eyes should be signing up and taking this course?
Well, in the classes, so it's interesting, the demographics in two different countries. So in the US, a majority is strength coaches. So actually 99% are strength coaches. So now I'm just applying for continuing ed credits for massage people and for physical therapists to take it as well, because it's an added, really definite added value. And so in Canada, a majority, probably 60%, are osteos, massage, and physical therapists. So strength coaches, actually, when I taught the dynamic brain healing, it was half and half, strength coaches and then therapists. So most of the coaches have the background of having, one, the ability to touch people, which stretching you should. A lot of them have the fascia FST work, because it just builds every tool that everyone has is an added value. So it's just adding to that toolbox of what does your person need. So the strength coach, and just here in Arizona, I just taught, and there was a few strength coaches, and one of them is like, this is opposite of everything that I know, and I said, well, actually, it turns out people who have no knowledge really about the fascial system via treatment, hands-on, are the best, because then their palpatory skills, their ability to really look at the lines of tension isn't already filtered through another modality. So for Ottawa, a lot of the people that are interested are strength coaches, but again, they really do need to have really the FST, ART, NKT. Actually, here in Arizona, the NKT people, I just met with a whole bunch of them, and one lady who named Sky, she teaches actually for them, and she's really excited to really collaborate and refer the NKT people to the work, because it's just an added value and it's very different. So in a nutshell, anyone really who wants more information on what fascia can do for training, for rehab, but if a coach or a therapist is working with somebody, I just had another person who had a concussion. She's been seeing the same physical therapist for 3 years, who is supposed to be a concussion specialist, twice a week for 3 years with no change. I'm like, that's insane. Number one, two, that's I think unethical, because at some point there's a refer out. I'm not helping you or not creating lasting change. So again, getting this really program out there, because it is a different way of looking, but the philosophy is, let's create the change so that you can do the next level, that you don't want to consistently do the same thing over and over again. So for the therapist or coach, if you are doing the same thing over and over again, this would be the program to look at. It could be the missing link that's not there, going, okay, is it the brain? Is it the fascia, in the sense of looking at the lines of tension? Because you can go into all sorts of, there's a torsion here, torsion there, but if there's, when I say lines of tension, which include all that, you can't go and look at one section. You have to look at globally at what's going on. So again, I have people reaching out who are fascia experts, and they email me and they're like, okay, you know, I hear you're the fascia person. And I'm like, yeah. And they're this, well, my calf, you know, like the fascia in my calf, I've been doing all these things and scraping and doing all that stuff. And I'm like, well, if you've been doing that for 6 months and it's not releasing, then it's not coming from your calf. We have to look at, I go, send me an entire, you know, full view of what's going on with you. And then I'll tell you what's going on. So it's so easy to see for me, and that's what I'm teaching for other people. What is the cause? Because they've seen so many great practitioners, and they are great, but they're focusing on, again, the symptom. And with that, the symptom, if that's the injury, then it will heal. But it's like, okay, is that 60%, 70%? We don't know. But if people are continually coming in for the same treatment, like IMS, specific like scraping tools and all that stuff, and it's not lasting, then we have to look globally. And that's just, yeah, a good tool for people to have.
So earlier there you've used a couple of acronyms now. You've used AK, so that would be applied kinesiology. You've used NKT, so for those who don't understand, was it NKT you used or
NKT, yeah, neurokinetic.
So yeah, neural kinetic therapy. FST would be fascia stretch therapy, which comes from the Stretch to Win Institute with Ann and Chris Frederick. ART is active release techniques. That's in Canada. Actually, I think now overall globally, it's a lot more restricted in that you have to have insurance for hands-on manipulation. So that's your athletic therapist, chiropractors, massage therapists, typically, and these are going to be people who are a little bit better at their craft. If they're getting into doing ART, they're taking stuff a little bit more seriously. And the very good ART practitioners solve a lot of problems very quickly, but sometimes there's still just something that might be a little off. You were talking about someone, was it 2 or 3 years they were going to the same, I think it was 3 years going to the same therapist. So to me, that kind of sounds a bit like the therapist was on a cash grab when they're saying come 3 times a week on top of that.
And you know what she was doing? She was doing ART.
Yeah, so sometimes the modality just isn't the correct modality. ART is an excellent, powerful modality.
Yes, it is.
Sometimes it's just not the modality that's needed for the job.
Exactly, because her issue wasn't the region she was doing the ART on.
Yeah.
So if she had looked fascially at where the origin was coming from and did that technique there, it would have been way more effective.
So any good coach or therapist is kind of like if you go to a garage with a car, they don't just have a single socket wrench and a drill and a hammer. They've got 400 different wrenches, socket wrenches, drills, hammers, depending on what job needs to be done. They've got spark plugs, X, Y, Z. They have all these tools. So a good coach and therapist has multiple tools that they can use to get the right job done. You don't use a Phillips screwdriver for a screw head that isn't Phillips. You're going to use the cross one, the star one, the cross one. So you use the right tool for the job at hand. So from so far what you've mentioned, so what are people going to learn September 17th and 18th at this course, and what are they going to be able to then take home and apply right away?
What are they going to learn? They're going to learn how to assess the fascia so that whatever treatment they want to use, they'll at least have that line of tension. And so the system works. So what they're going to learn is the system. Always taking photos, always looking at the lines of tension. And there's great programs that can draw on there so you can see the lines of tension. Recording a symptom inventory, like all the data, so that, you know, if they wanted to do a case study on this work, that they could do that. So again, the fascia assessment, the key is there. They're going to learn hands-on techniques. So there are five protocols that I'm teaching, and with each one, they'll have a choice of 3 to 4 different ways of approaching that. So it's a lot of content, it's a lot of stuff, but then each one people have an affinity to. So if you're the strength coach, you may want to pick this one. If you're that therapist, you may want to pick this one. And it really, there's no reason, rhyme or reason for that. People choose whatever one feels best for them and their body. So during the whole thing, I'm also making sure people are ergonomically correct, in the right position, so there's no pressure on them, their body, and they can hold certain things forever. Because I'm teaching some myofascial stuff, direct fascial stuff, fascial spacing, which people also use stretching, but it's very specific on certain areas. Again, looking at how that can change the entire body, but it's all based on the fascia assessment.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So based on that, this course is geared towards not just your coach but your therapist. So what level of coach and therapist would be best served taking this? You've mentioned that it would be good if they've done like an FST, ART, having some hands-on experience. But what level of coach is going to be able to best apply this and be the person for you to be able to teach? Because if they're necessarily green around the ears coach, they might not necessarily be very good for learning it, because they just don't, no offense to them or anything, they just don't know what they don't know yet.
Right. And so they will quickly find out what they don't know if they're taking the course, but they will be overwhelmed. So like Polican trained, Ben Prentice people, there's so many great coaching programs out there, but with the FST, like a lot of them that have come to me, they want a little bit more of in-depth around the fascia. So that could be level 1, level 2, or level 3. It's the level 3 person would be okay going, okay, there is a missing link, the assessment piece or the specific myofascial techniques, because the Rolfing technique disregards really the lymphatic and the nervous system. It's really just dealing with the fascia. So it's a whole different mindset and approach. So this would give them really a gateway into addressing nerve and lymph and how it interacts with the fascia, and how to really switch that on. So again, each person, like I get people emailing me and they're like, well, am I qualified? Can I take it? I've had acupuncturists take the class. And people like Pilates people, but they just have that passion for learning, and they're constantly working with people in their body and movement. And the movement piece is huge with the fascia. So the movement assessment is in there as well. But I think, yeah, somebody who's just graduated, I have several calls of people like that. And then I just have a chat with them, and from the conversation, they decide really if it's something that they can do, because it's like, this is what it entails. And are you ready for that, to have the tools in the toolbox already? And then it just elevates them. So again, having, being certified in your field is essential.
Okay, so that's actually a really good thing for people to know, is make sure you've got some experience, not just, oh, I just started coaching or I just started doing treatment. Make sure you've actually got some experience before signing up for this course. So how large is the course? It's 2 days. It's going to be 2 full days basically. How many people do you currently have space for?
Well, my classes I keep pretty small, so anywhere between 10 and 12,
Okay.
because it's really intense in the sense of, again, changing the mindset of possibly being opposite of what people have learned already. So it takes that while to digest. And another strength coach said to me, who did the dynamic brain healing from California and who did the upper body level 1, it took her, she goes, on the first day, she didn't know if she would ever absorb or assimilate it. And then by the third day, she's like, yeah, and rocking it. So it's really the system and repetitiveness. So each time, each protocol builds on the other. So as they do that, they're repeating it every time they do another protocol. So it's like protocol 1 is always, even if it's just a couple minutes, then they go into the second. So it's really built for success, really that way. And so 10 to 12, currently we have space, I think, and I'm not in charge of all that, but I think there's space for like 4 or 5 people.
Okay, so
So
that's good. So what this is also telling people is no matter what the course is going on, so there's space right now for 4 to 5 people, which is excellent. It's going to be held at my training facility here in Ottawa. All of that information will be up on Simone's website, as well as which will be linked below. So this is where I do the little if you like this content, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe below. You know, these days you have to
exactly,
put
it
those little
matters.
cues in there for people.
Mhm.
Uh, the other thing people have the option to do while they are at my facility is they'll be able to do a workout. My facility is equipped with Atlantis and Prime equipment. We'll make sure that any audiovisual support that's needed will be in place, and we'll try to get it tested out at least the day before. Uh, I'll do what I can to ensure that there's there's a good uh local grocer nearby. That's if you're driving 5 minutes, if you're walking it's 20-minute walk type of thing. It's called Farm Boy. It's just around the corner and down the street. There's on weekends there's ample parking at my facility. I'm the only place I believe that's typically ever open on a weekend. So all of that will be taken care of. There are hotels nearby as well as further out. So there's multiple ways for people to be able to get there. There's 2 major highway exits to get there. All of the location details will be included. So Simone, from there, how would you like to end things off for people to kind of finish getting their mind around attending this course and why it is something that they'll be able to benefit themselves and their client slash patients right away when they go back home, whether they live in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, the US, they're coming from Tajikistan for the course, so that they are able to go home with something to apply immediately.
Well, currently I'm getting a lot of requests for who are doing the work in Toronto and Ottawa. So, and I also have other practitioners that have done the work and they know people in those areas. So, and people are like, there's no one there who does it. And it's surprising. So again, it's an open market. I support in referring. I also support in the understanding how to market it and really the value. So this work changes people's pain and it changes their performance, and that's guaranteed. It absolutely does. It also, again, for the practitioner, it creates, a space for you to be an expert. If you're doing all these fascia classes and then you take this fascia class, you are the fascia person. And then when people go to you, you have like a 3-dimension. If you're doing the FST, the ART, and this work, it's like, wow, you pretty much have everything that you need to facilitate change and healing in a person. So yeah, it's just the need is there, and people need the work, and it is my passion. I created this because people who are having chronic long-term pain, and again, seeing the best in the world. And again, it's just changing the focus, changing what we're looking at, and then doing the system of protocols on people. So really creating that system gives really the ease and the ability to, I support people, I answer questions all the time. I have a Facebook group, but I have a lot of people emailing me. So I offer that support. And to like people, I have a monthly group that meets, and they can send their photos in. So I can also guide them into, okay, that's what they need, and just confirming that. And so the client could even pay for a Zoom session with me while the trainer's there, or the therapist, because it's just added value that you have access to this information. Really what people want is results, and that's all I'm about. So it's really hard for me to market because I'm a results person. And so with like the guys from the Dominican, they're like, you need to show more what you're doing. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm now showing results, like the upper body in Instagram, where the college kid, he's like, oh my gosh, like his whole upper thoracic changed, where he now has a six pack after 40-minute treatment. And that's what he was looking at, that, oh my gosh. But the rest is that he was symmetrical, he had his hips released, and he had more power. But for him, aesthetically, he went from being flat and really his abs not sticking out. So if you guys want to check it out on Instagram, on the Fascia Training Institute, it's a pretty good photo. But I'm about results. And I really pretty much, if the work doesn't work, then we have to find a solution. But it's always a solution. And normally this work is very direct, and it produces the results that we want and the person wants. So that's another thing. We really have to focus on what their athlete, their client wants. Like, what does the client or the athlete's coach want? What do they want? And really, most is to, one, prevent injury, and maybe they have an injury, and so how do they recover from that? And yeah, so it's really providing results, and that's what the course is really all about.
Yeah. So again, all the information for the course will be in the description below. I'm going to thank Simone, and we're going to get this out to as many people as possible. And